Welcome back to the Syncom Smalltalk tutorial series. What we'd like to do this morning is go back to the debugger and go through some common debugging exercises using the class we built one of the last screencasts when we did some browser usage. So with that in mind, what we're going to do is close this little window and we're going to go back in here to a workspace. We've got our counter object, which we built up in the browser last time, and you can see we've got this add one, subtract one kind of thing going on. And you notice here that I'm going to use multiply 10, which is not an API I've got, but there's a reason for that. So let's go ahead and do something simple. We're going to create an instance of the counter, so we'll do that. What we're doing is kind of ad hoc testing in a workspace, which does not obviate the need for unit tests, mind you, but this is something Smalltalkers quite often do, is do ad hoc testing in a workspace before they get to the meat and potatoes of writing code. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and test our add one. So we'll do a do it, or actually let's do a print it and see what we get. And you notice, well, boom, we've got an instance of the debugger coming up, which means we've got an unhandled exception. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to maximize this so you can see everything quite easily. And usually down here you see this exception. That's not where you want to go. You want to scroll down in this list until you get to methods you recognize. What this list is the stack. So you see in an unbound method I tried to send add one to the counter object, and it says unbound here because I'm in a workspace. If I had been deeper into my own code, I'd see more methods I recognize. Up here we see counter is the class, and over here we see the method. That's pointing out that we're in the counter class. It's an instance. If it were the class, it'd say counter class. And you can see here, you can see the method we're trying to send is plus 10, and it doesn't recognize it. So if we go over here to count, well, we see in the inspector, we can see what's going on. We see that that's nil. Now you can sort of kind of fix this. You can put a 0 here, and I can accept this. And you'll see that now if I go ahead and just do this and hit Apple S, I'm on a Mac, but Control S would be on Windows, I can go ahead and proceed, and then everything will work, and then I can hit run, and you can see that I get back 10. But of course, that only sort of fixed it. The problem is that my initialization routine is wrong, so that didn't really isolate it all that exactly. What I need to do is go back and look at the initialize method here and see, well, there's my problem. I want to change that to 0, so anytime I create a new one, it's going to be correct, so I'll do that. And that allows me to do this, but I see another problem here. Add one gave me a result of 10. How is that possibly correct? Well, let's go into the debugger and find out. What we'll do is we'll go back into the workspace and we'll create a new one so we're starting fresh. And in the debugger, we'll go straight in by debugging it from here, and that'll allow me to go in here, and I'll just step past this part. I now know that initialization works because I fixed that. But I want to see what's wrong with my add one method. And of course I get here and I see, well, I'm adding 10. Now the nice thing is the debugger is a browser that allows you to debug. I can go here and change this code to do the right thing, hit my compile key, or of course I could have just right clicked and said accept. And notice the stack got reset, and now I'm saying count plus 1. Let's go ahead and run this. And I didn't print it, so let's go ahead and print it. And you see now I get the counter of 1. So that works out well. Now, if I do subtract 1, in theory this should give me back a 0, so let's go ahead and print that. And it gives me something like -9. Well, that's not right, so let's go ahead and just leave that alone. We'll debug this. So we can debug just a little bit of it. I don't have to restart the whole thing since the workspace has these temporary variables. I can go here and say, well, I'd like to debug just this one line. So let's go in here and send into that. And now I see count minus 10. Well, that's obviously not right. Let's go ahead and fix that. And again, I'll compile it, and now if I step and then run, I should see everything's right. So let's go ahead and do it from scratch so that we should see us getting back to 0. So let's do a print it, and sure enough, it's back where I expect it. Now at this point, let's go ahead and do some of this. We want to multiply by 10, but we want to get a value that actually makes sense to multiply by 10. So what we'll do is we'll do it here, so that in theory, if I go here and inspect this guy, the count should be at 1, and I see it is. So with that in mind, let's multiply by 10, and if this all works, I should come out with 10. So we'll do it on this. And you see here we get message not understood. So let's go here to the unbound method. Multiply 10 isn't understood. Well, it turns out we never wrote this. Let's move this out of the way for just a moment. And you see in here, if I go to the API methods, it's not there. And to make sure I'm not missing something, it's not in there anywhere. So what did I do? Well, I didn't write it. I could go back to the browser at this point. But the nice thing about the Syncom Smalltalk debugger is, under the correct menu, notice there's define method. There's also a correct selector if I just misspelled something, but define method's a nice one. Notice it puts in multiply 10, and it's smart enough to recognize I was in the counter object. Now it doesn't know what I want to do with this code, of course. It can't write my method, but I can do this, self count self count times 10. And now we'll just accept this. Now notice, from the debugger, without getting out of my debug flow, I've changed the code. Now if I run this and take a look at this guy, I should be able to see that the value is 100 like I expected, because I had previously set it to 10. So everything works out fine. So if you come in here and look at my multiply 1, you see that it's not in there. It's going to be somewhere else in counter under as yet unclassified. You see here multiply 10 times 10. So everything works the way I expected. And that's really kind of a basic run through of the debugger using Syncom Smalltalk. Again, I didn't stress this at the beginning, but the debugger is the same in both VisualWorks and Object Studio. So no matter which one of the two products you're using, you're going to get the same workflow out of the debugger. Everything will work the same exact way. So that should give you some basic ideas of how the tool works, along with the last screencast we did where we went over the entire menu structure and pane. So that's about it for today. Until next time, have fun with Syncom Smalltalk.